Minjun dropped his keys on the counter, loosening his tie as he walked in. He stopped when he saw Zara still awake, surrounded by papers and her laptop glowing in the dim light. "It's 3 in the morning," he said softly. "I know. I couldn't sleep." Zara rubbed her eyes, then gestured at the documents. "I think I found another shell company." She stood, moving toward him before she could second-guess herself. "Sit down." Zara said, "Sit down." Something in her tone made him obey. He settled onto the couch and she disappeared into the bathroom, returning with the first aid kit that was becoming far too familiar. She knelt between his legs, tilting his face toward the light. This close she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the weight he carried like armor. "Who did this?" she asked, dabbing gently at the cut. "Someone who wanted to send a message to my uncle. I was just the messenger service." His hand came up to catch her wrist, but gently. "You don't have to do this." "I know." "Then why are you?" Zara paused. Minjun's eyes searched hers, and something vulnerable flickered across his face. "Please like and subscribe, it helps the channel." "You keep surprising me." "How?" "You should hate me. You should be plotting your escape every second. Instead you're here at 3 in the morning worried about a cut on my face." His thumb traced small circles on the inside of her wrist. "Why?" Minjun's expression grew serious. His free hand came up to cup her face, forcing her to meet his gaze. "What if I don't want temporary?" Zara's heart stopped. "Minjun, what if I want you to stay? Not as my captive or my analyst or any other excuse I've been telling myself. Just stay with me." "You don't mean that." "It's late, you're hurt, you're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years." His forehead touched hers and Zara's eyes fluttered closed. "You walked into my world by accident, Zara, but keeping you here? That was the most selfish, deliberate choice I've ever made." Zara Mitchell had exactly 3 rules for surviving as a grad student in Seoul. Don't run out of kimchi, always carry an umbrella, and never, ever wander into places where you don't belong. She broke the 3rd rule on a rainy Tuesday in Gangnam. The conference had been mind-numbing hours of presentations on international trade law that blurred together like watercolors in the rain. When the break finally came, Zara practically sprinted toward the restroom, her bladder screaming in protest. She pushed through a heavy wooden door marked with elegant Hangul characters she was too desperate to properly translate. The bathroom was oddly luxurious. Black marble, gold fixtures, and the faint scent of expensive cologne. She was mid-thought about how fancy Korean conference centers were when she heard voices. Deep male voices speaking rapid Korean. Her blood turned to ice. This was not the women's restroom. Zara froze in the stall, her breath caught somewhere between her lungs and her throat. The voices grew closer, and through the crack in the door she could see multiple pairs of expensive Italian leather shoes. The conversation had an edge to it. Tense, businesslike, dangerous. Then she heard something that made her heart stop. The unmistakable sound of a gun being loaded. "The shipment arrives Thursday," one voice said in Korean. Zara's language skills were intermediate at best, but she caught enough. "Busan Port. Container 447. She should have stayed quiet. She should have waited. Instead her phone, perched precariously on the toilet paper holder, chose that exact moment to slip, clattering against the marble floor with a sound like a gunshot. The voices stopped. Footsteps approached her stall. "Negocio." "Who's there?" Zara's mind raced. She could pretend not to speak Korean. She could claim innocence. The stall door was kicked open with enough force to bang against the wall. 3 men in tailored black suits stared down at her. But it was the 4th man standing slightly behind them who stole the air from her lungs. He was tall for a Korean man, with sharp features that looked carved from marble, dark eyes that held galaxies of secrets, and an expression of mild surprise that somehow made him more terrifying. His suit probably cost more than her entire year's tuition. "Well," he said in perfect English, a slight smile playing at his lips. "This is unexpected." The man introduced himself as Minjun Park, though Zara suspected that wasn't his real name. Everything about him screamed danger wrapped in designer clothing. They'd moved her, not roughly but with the kind of efficiency that suggested they'd done this before, to a private room in what she now understood was not a conference center at all, but an exclusive private club. The kind of place where Korea's underground power brokers made deals that would never see daylight. "You have put me in a difficult position, Miss Mitchell," Minjun said, settling into a leather chair across from her. He'd known her name without asking. Of course he had. You understand what you heard? I didn't hear anything, Zara said quickly. I don't even speak Korean that well. I was just looking for the bathroom, I swear. Your thesis is on international smuggling operations and their economic impact on East Asian markets. Minjun interrupted, his voice calm but sharp as a blade. You speak Korean well enough to have presented at 3 academic conferences in Seoul. And you heard enough. Zara's mouth went dry. He'd done his homework fast. I won't say anything. I'll forget everything. I'll go to the police? Minjun's smile didn't reach his eyes. Tell them what, exactly? That you illegally entered a private establishment and overheard a conversation you shouldn't have been listening to. He had a point. So what happens now? Zara forced herself to meet his gaze, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. You make me disappear? Something flickered in Minjun's expression. Respect, maybe, or amusement. Dramatic. No, Miss Mitchell. I'm going to make you a proposition. He leaned forward and Zara caught the scent of his cologne, something dark and woody that probably cost more than her monthly rent. You're going to stay with us for a while. Call it protective custody. Until we can verify that you are who you claim to be and determine what to do with you. You can't just kidnap me. People will notice I'm gone. My advisor, my roommate. Your roommate Ji-won believes you've accepted a last-minute research opportunity in Busan, Minjun said smoothly. Your advisor has received an email from you explaining the same. You're a dedicated student. No one will question your sudden trip. Zara stared at him, horror dawning. You hacked my email. My phone. We're being thorough. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced ease. You'll be comfortable. You'll be safe. And if you're smart, Miss Mitchell, you'll treat this as the academic opportunity of a lifetime. How many researchers get to observe a Korean syndicate from the inside? This is insane. This is necessary. His expression hardened. I have enemies who would love to know what you heard today. Keeping you close keeps you alive. Think of it as a mutually beneficial arrangement. As 2 men escorted her out, Zara caught Minjun watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. It looked almost like curiosity. She had no idea that her accidental intrusion had set off something far more dangerous than a security breach. She'd caught the attention of a man who never let anything go. The protective custody turned out to be a penthouse apartment in one of Seoul's most expensive neighborhoods, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Han River. It was beautiful, spacious, and utterly impossible to escape from. Zara had checked. She'd been there for 3 days when Minjun returned. He arrived without warning, letting himself in with a keycard while Zara was attempting to make sense of the Korean news on the massive television. She jumped when she saw him, instinctively pulling her cardigan tighter around herself. Settling in? He asked, setting down a bag from what appeared to be a high-end department store. Is that what you call being held prisoner? I call it keeping you alive. He moved to the windows, gazing out at the city lights. There was an incident at the port last night. Someone leaked information about our operations. 3 men died. Zara felt the blood drain from her face. I didn't. I know. He turned to face her, and his expression was softer than she'd seen before. You've been here. Under surveillance. Which means either you're innocent, or you're an exceptionally good actress with accomplices. I vote for innocent. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Your background check came through. Orphaned at 15, raised by your grandmother in Chicago. Full scholarship to Northwestern, graduated top of your class. Came to Seoul on a Fulbright to study economic policy. He paused. You're brilliant, Miss Mitchell. Too brilliant to throw your life away on something as foolish as stumbling into the wrong bathroom. Yet here we are, Zara said, trying to keep her voice steady. Minjun moved closer and Zara forced herself not to retreat. He studied her face with an intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness. Here we are, he repeated softly. Tell me, Miss Mitchell, what do you know about the Watson family? The Chaebol? One of the biggest conglomerates in Korea. Electronics, shipping, construction. Why? Because my grandfather built that empire from nothing, Minjun said, his voice carrying an edge she hadn't heard before. And my uncle stole it from us. What you stumbled into wasn't just a smuggling operation. It's a war. A war to take back what's mine. Zara blinked, recalibrating everything she thought she knew. You're Watson. Park Minjun Watson, he corrected. Though I haven't used that name in 10 years. Not since my uncle had my father killed and framed it as a suicide. The vulnerability in his voice caught her off guard. This wasn't just a criminal. This was a man fighting for something he believed was rightfully his. Why are you telling me this? Minjun's dark eyes locked with hers. Because I'm beginning to think your wrong turn might have been fate. You're an economist who specializes in gray market operations. You understand the systems I'm fighting against better than most of my own people. He paused. And because you're the first person in years who's looked at me like I'm human, not a monster. Zara's breath caught. There was something dangerous happening here, something that had nothing to do with smuggling operations or family vendettas. What do you want from me? For now. Your word that you'll stay. That you'll help me understand the economic vulnerabilities in my uncle's operations. His gaze intensified. And maybe, eventually, your trust. Before Zara could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression hardened instantly. We have a problem, he said, already moving toward the door. Stay here. Don't open the door for anyone but me. Wait, what's happening? But he was already gone, leaving Zara alone with the weight of revelations she never asked for and a dangerous attraction she couldn't afford to feel. The problem, as it turned out, was that Minjun's uncle had somehow learned about Zara's existence. She didn't find this out until later that night, when Minjun returned to the penthouse with a bruise blooming along his jaw and blood on his shirt cuff. He moved to the bar without a word, pouring himself 2 fingers of whiskey. You're hurt, Zara said, standing from the couch where she'd been pretending to read for the past 3 hours. It's nothing. It's not nothing. Let me look at it. Since when do economists moonlight as nurses? Since they started living with stubborn mafia bosses who won't take care of themselves. The words were out before Zara could stop them, and she froze, realizing she'd just called this her living situation. As if she'd accepted it. Minjun's eyes found hers, something unreadable in their depths. After a moment he set down his glass and sat on the couch, a silent invitation. Zara approached cautiously, retrieving the first aid kit she discovered in the bathroom earlier. She settled beside him, close enough to smell the copper tang of blood mixed with his cologne. What happened? She asked quietly, dabbing at the cut above his eyebrow with antiseptic. My uncle knows you exist. Not your name yet, but he knows someone was in that bathroom. He's looking for you. Minjun winced slightly as she worked. I had to convince my own people that keeping you alive was worth the risk. And did you? Convince them? I'm very persuasive. His lips quirked, but there was no humor in it. Though it helped that you've actually been useful. The analysis you did of those shipping manifests I left out. You found the pattern my accountant missed. Zara's hands stilled. You left those out deliberately? To test me. To see if you were as smart as your credentials suggested. He caught her wrist gently as she pulled away. You are. Smarter maybe. You identified 3 shell companies we didn't know existed. I shouldn't be helping you, Zara said, but she didn't pull her hand free. This is illegal. All of it. Is it illegal to take back what was stolen? To seek justice when the law is bought and paid for by the man who murdered your father? Minjun's voice was low, intense. You study these systems, Zara. You know how they work. You know that sometimes the only way to fight corruption is from outside the corrupted system. He'd used her first name. When had they crossed that line? That's not the same as smuggling. We smuggle art and antiquities that were stolen from Korean museums during the colonial period, Minjun interrupted. Pieces that belong in Korea but are sitting in private collections around the world. We smuggle medications that are price gouged in Korea but available cheaply elsewhere. And yes, sometimes we smuggle weapons, but only to protect ourselves from my uncle's attempts to kill us. Zara stared at him, her worldview tilting on its axis. You're telling me you're Robin Hood with better fashion sense? He laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face entirely. Something like that. Though I admit the lines get blurry sometimes. We're not saints, Zara. But we're not monsters either. Then what are you? Survivors. His thumb traced a small circle on the inside of her wrist and Zara's pulse jumped. People who were pushed into the shadows and learned to thrive there. The moment stretched between them, charged with something electric and dangerous. Zara knew she should move away, should remember that this man was still her captor, that Stockholm Syndrome was a real thing, that nothing good could come from this. Instead she heard herself ask, what happens when you get your revenge? When you take back the Watchan Empire? Minjun's expression grew distant. Then maybe I can finally rest. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. He released her wrist and stood, the moment breaking like a spell. You should sleep. Tomorrow I need you to look at something more complicated. Evidence of embezzlement we're compiling against my uncle. And if I refuse? He paused at the doorway to the master bedroom he'd been occupying. Then I'll bring you coffee and ask nicely. You're not a prisoner anymore, Zara. You haven't been for days. You're choosing to stay. The door closed behind him, leaving Zara alone with the uncomfortable realization that he was right. 2 weeks into her captivity that wasn't captivity, Zara found herself in the back of a Mercedes, heading to what Minjun vaguely described as a meeting. She'd argued against coming, but he'd been insistent, and somewhere along the way she'd stopped being able to say no to him. Dangerous territory, her brain supplied. You're in very dangerous territory. Where exactly are we going? She asked as the car wound through increasingly empty streets. To meet someone who can help us access my uncle's financial records, Minjun said, scrolling through his phone. He dressed down today, black jeans, a black sweater, no suit. Somehow it made him look more dangerous, not less. She's particular. Seo-yun. My cousin. Technically. Zara turned to stare at him. Your cousin works against your uncle? Her father. It's complicated. Minjun's jaw tightened. Seo-yun and I were close growing up. When my father died, she was the only one who believed me about the murder. But she's stuck inside the empire, playing the dutiful daughter while secretly funneling me information. That sounds incredibly dangerous for her. It is. Which is why we only meet face to face when absolutely necessary. He finally looked up from his phone, his eyes finding hers. And why I need you there. You understand the financial structures we're trying to unravel. You can ask the right questions. The meeting took place in a private room at a traditional Korean restaurant, the kind where you removed your shoes and sat on floor cushions. Seo-yun arrived 15 minutes after them, and Zara understood immediately why she'd survived her double life so long. She had a face that gave nothing away, beautiful and cold as porcelain, until she saw Minjun. Then something cracked just for a moment. Appa, she said softly, and they embraced briefly. When Seo-yun's gaze landed on Zara, the warmth vanished. This is her? The American. Zara Mitchell, Minjun said. She's brilliant and she's helping us. Is she now? Seo-yun settled onto a cushion, her designer dress somehow perfect even in the casual setting. Tell me, Miss Mitchell, what exactly motivates an American academic to help dismantle a Korean conglomerate? The question was sharp, probing. Zara met it head-on. Curiosity initially. No. I've seen the evidence of what your father has done. The workers cheated out of pensions. The safety violations that killed people. The politicians bought and sold like commodities. She paused. I study these systems because I want to understand how to break them. This is my chance to actually do it. Something shifted in Seo-yun's expression. Careful, Miss Mitchell. People who try to break these systems tend to break themselves in the process. Is that what you're doing? Breaking yourself? Seo-yun laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. Every single day. She pulled out a tablet, sliding it across the low table. But some things are worth breaking for. These are the access codes to my father's secondary accounting system. The one his official accountants don't know exists. Zara leaned forward, studying the screen, and her eyes widened. This is everything. Years of embezzlement, bribery, tax fraud. Enough to put him away for life, Seo-yun confirmed. If it can be presented to prosecutors who aren't in his pocket. Which is where you come in, Appa. You've been building connections with the reform faction in the prosecutor's office, haven't you? Minjun nodded, but his expression was troubled. It's risky. Once we hand this over, there's no going back. Father will know it came from inside. He already suspects me, Seo-yun said quietly. He's been having me followed. I have maybe a month before he moves against me. Then we get you out, Minjun said immediately. Tonight. I have resources. No. Seo-yun's voice was firm. I can do more damage from inside. I just need you to move fast once you have what you need. Her gaze flickered to Zara. Both of you. You're the key to making sense of this data in a way prosecutors can understand. The weight of responsibility settled over Zara like a physical thing. This wasn't an intellectual exercise anymore. This was real, with real consequences for real people. I'll do it, she said. I'll help. Minjun's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently. When had that become natural? When had his touch started feeling like an anchor instead of a threat? As they left the restaurant hours later, Zara's mind spinning with financial data and legal strategies, Minjun pulled her close as they walked to the car. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For doing this. For staying." "I'm not sure I ever had a choice," Zara admitted. "I think you caught me the moment you kicked open that bathroom stall." His laugh was low and warm. "If it helps, you caught me too. I just didn't know it yet." The raid on Watchen headquarters happened 3 weeks later, coordinated between reform prosecutors and federal financial crimes investigators. Zara watched it unfold on the news from Minjun's penthouse, her analysis having formed the backbone of the prosecution's case. Minjun stood at the windows, motionless, as reporters described his uncle being led out in handcuffs. "It's over," Zara said softly, coming to stand beside him. "It's beginning," he corrected. "This is just the first move. Uncle's lawyers will fight. His allies will retaliate. And Seo-yun." His voice caught. "She's been arrested too. Protective custody, they say, but..." She knew the risks. "That doesn't make it easier." He turned to face her, and the raw emotion in his eyes stole her breath. "Nothing about this has been easy. Except you. Me. You've been the easy part, Zara. From the moment you walked into that bathroom, defiant and terrified and brilliant." He reached out, cupping her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything she knew about him. "You've been the easy part. Falling for you has been the easy part." Zara's heart hammered. "Minjun. I know I shouldn't," he continued, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. "I know you were forced into this, that you have every right to walk away now that you're free. I know I'm dangerous and probably bad for you, and..." She kissed him to shut him up. It was soft at first, tentative, a question more than a statement. But then Minjun's arms wrapped around her, pulling her close, and the kiss deepened into something desperate and hungry. All the tension of the past weeks, all the denial and resistance melted away. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Zara rested her forehead against his chest. "I should hate you," she whispered. "You kidnapped me. You turned my life upside down. You made me complicit in illegal activities and possibly ruined my academic career. I know. But I don't." She looked up at him. "I don't hate you. I don't even know when it happened, but somewhere between the threats and the protection and the late nights analyzing financial records, I fell for you too." Minjun's smile was like sunrise. "Terrible judgment on your part. The worst." She kissed him again. "But I'm apparently committed to bad decisions now." They stumbled toward the bedroom, shedding clothes and inhibitions, the sole skyline bearing witness to two people who should never have met, finding solace in each other anyway. Later, tangled in expensive sheets with Minjun's arm draped over her waist, Zara stared at the ceiling and wondered what happened now. The case against his uncle would take months, maybe years. Minjun would be called to testify, his own illegal activities potentially exposed. "What are you thinking?" he murmured against her shoulder. "That this is complicated. Everything worth having is complicated. Is that what I am? Worth having?" He propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Zara Mitchell, you walked into my life by accident and became the most important person in it. You're worth having. Worth protecting. Worth..." He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "Worth changing for. What does that mean?" "It means I'm done after this. The smuggling, the underground operations, I'm getting out. Seo-yun and I will take our rightful places in the legitimate business world, and I'm leaving the shadows behind." His fingers traced patterns on her skin. "But only if you'll stay. Only if you'll help me figure out how to be a normal person again." Tears pricked Zara's eyes. That's a lot of pressure to put on a girl who just wanted to find the bathroom. Too much. She pulled him down for a kiss. "No. It's exactly right." 6 months later, Zara stood in the Watchen headquarters, the legitimate one, staring at the nameplate on her new office door. Dr. Zara Mitchell, Director of Ethics and Compliance. She still couldn't quite believe it was real. The trial had been brutal but successful. Minjun's uncle was serving 20 years for embezzlement, bribery and tax fraud. Seo-yun had been cleared of all charges and now served as CFO, while Minjun had assumed his rightful position as CEO of Watchen Industries. "Admiring your nameplate?" a familiar voice asked. Zara turned to find Minjun leaning against the doorframe, looking unfairly handsome in a perfectly tailored suit. "Some things never changed. I'm still processing," she admitted. 3 months ago I was a grad student. Now I'm running ethics compliance for one of Korea's largest conglomerates. You were always meant for more than academia, Minjun said, crossing to her and pulling her close. They'd stopped pretending to hide their relationship weeks ago. Though I admit I'm biased. Extremely biased. She kissed him softly. How was the board meeting? Tedious. They spent an hour debating office furniture budgets. He sighed dramatically. I miss when my biggest problem was smuggling operations and family vendettas. Liar. You love this. He smiled, genuine and warm. I love you. This is just convenient. Romantic. I'm working on it. Normal relationships are harder than criminal enterprises, it turns out. Zara laughed, but her expression grew serious. Do you ever regret it? Giving up that life? Minjun considered the question carefully. Sometimes I miss the simplicity of it. Clear enemies, clear objectives. But then I come home to you, or I see Seo-yeon finally smile without that edge of fear, or I approve a project that will actually help people instead of just consolidating power, and I remember why I chose this. Any word from your people? The ones who worked with you before. Most have transitioned to legitimate roles. Some chose to stay in the shadows. I can't blame them. Seductive, that life. The power, the danger, the freedom from rules. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. But I have something more seductive now. I walked into the wrong bathroom, Zara said wonderingly, as she had 100 times before. How did that turn into this? Maybe there are no wrong doors, Minjun suggested. Maybe you walked through exactly the door you were meant to. That's very philosophical for a former crime boss. Reformed crime boss, thank you. And I have a very smart girlfriend who's teaching me to think differently. He glanced at his watch. Speaking of which, we're going to be late for dinner with your grandmother if we don't leave now. Zara's grandmother had flown in from Chicago the week before, equal parts horrified by and impressed with Zara's whirlwind romance with a Korean suit. She'd pulled Minjun aside during her first visit and said something to him in rapid-fire English that made him pale and nod vigorously. Zara had never been able to get either of them to tell her what was said. As they rode the elevator down to the parking garage, Zara's phone buzzed with a message from Seo-yeon. * new project proposal for the foundation. Scholarships for orphans interested in business. Thought you'd want to be involved. *. She showed Minjun, who smiled softly. She's finding her way too. We all are, Zara agreed. The elevator opened into the garage, and as they walked toward Minjun's car, still expensive, but notably less flashy than before, Zara felt a sense of contentment she'd never expected to find. Her life had been turned upside down by one wrong turn, one mistake, one bathroom door. But standing here now, with Minjun's hand in hers and a future full of possibility stretching ahead, she couldn't bring herself to regret a single moment of it. Even the terrifying parts. Especially the terrifying parts. Because the wrong door had led her exactly where she belonged. What are you smiling about? Minjun asked as he opened her car door. Just thinking about bathrooms and fate, Zara said. You're very strange. It's one of my favorite things about you. I have a list of favorite things about you too, she said, sliding into the passenger seat. But we're already late, so I'll save it for later. Tease. As they drove through Seoul's evening streets, the city lights reflecting off the Han River, Zara thought about all the choices that had led her here. The scholarship to Northwestern. The Fulbright to Seoul. The conference she almost skipped. The bathroom door she definitely should have read more carefully. Every choice, every accident, every moment of fate or luck or cosmic coincidence had brought her to this man, this life, this unexpected happy ending. And if anyone had told her 6 months ago that getting kidnapped by the Korean Mafia would be the best thing that ever happened to her, she would have thought they were insane. No. Now she knew better. Sometimes the best stories start with the worst decisions. And sometimes the wrong door is exactly the right one after all. Please like and subscribe and check out the channel for more interesting stories.